in Braves country.
Good afternoon, Braves country. Hope y'all are having a hell of a day. We originally had these planned for about 5. I'm getting home a little earlier than I thought, so I figured we'd start doing these at 4. Get to it on Mondays. We're doing this on Mondays during the off season. We will do some drops from time to time, but Mondays is appointment based. We'll do it at 4 o'clock, and then throughout the off season, we're going to do some drops. Well, typically when it starts heating up, we'll start doing a second drop later in the week. And then anytime there's a big signing, whether it's with the Braves, whether it's one of the Braves rivals, we'll jump on there as well. Hope y'all are having a good day. Please smash that like button. So I see some people climbing in. And good afternoon to everybody. Hope you're having a good off season. And oh man alive.
You just can't necessarily.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, welcome in to Braves Country Hot Stove. And we see some folks in the chat. Gilbert says, just say it, Ohtani is coming to the race. I saw so here's an interesting one that I saw today. Heard some folks chatting around. They were talking about the possibility of Shohei Ohtani making his way to the New York Mets. I just don't see it. Now, what they're saying is that the Mets have all but given up on it. They don't think that there's any, that they don't have any real chance. And the folks that were arguing back and forth were saying, well, they got to dip their toe in. And I do think they're going to make some kind of an offer. But I don't believe Ohtani. And here's the one that really got me. And we're going to get into the different free agents here in a second. Here's the one that really got me. If you've been following this show, you know I've been saying pre-off season, going back to mid-summer, that I always thought all along it was going to be the Dodgers to lose. Giants had a shot. You could see Seattle, but the dark horse team that I've had this whole time has been the Boston Red Sox. And today, for the first time, I actually heard that being given some credence. They're saying that Ohtani's camp has said that he has interest in the Boston Red Sox. And rightfully so. If you've been to Boston, you would understand why. And not to mention the fact the Red Sox have not spent any big money recently. They held on to Devers, but you remember they let Mookie Betts go, and they are big spenders. So I would tend to think that they're going to be in play some shape or form to try to bring Ohtani to Boston. I still think he ends up a Dodger. I know a lot of us in Braves country don't want to see it, but it is what it is. They're going to back the truck up. They're going to get Shohei Ohtani, or at least try like hell to get Shohei Ohtani. And remember, he won't be able to pitch in 2024. So realistically, they're going to be overpaying for a designated hitter, but then going forward after that, he obviously is one of the better pitchers in the game. If you're the Dodgers and you got the money and you know you're going to make some money, a lot of money back with jersey sales and whatnot, I don't see a lot of downside. I know there's a lot of folks out there that think it's too much money to give to one player, but he's a generational talent. He's not your everyday player, and I don't see a lot of downside from signing Shohei Ohtani to a 10-year deal. Do we hope it doesn't work out? Of course, because he's not coming to Braves country. But personally, I would probably do the same thing if I were the Dodgers. You just have an opportunity to really expand your market globally and sell a hell of a lot. I mean, a hell of a lot of jerseys. It'll be insane. How many? I'm assuming he'll wear 17. I don't know if that's already been retired by the Dodgers at some point, but You got to figure 17 or whatever number he wears in Los Angeles Dodger blue will go flying off the shelf. Okay. Some things to think about, and jotted some things down. Before we get into them, I did have a clip from Anthopoulos, and this was, to be fair, this was shortly after the season ended. I've had this clip for a while, just haven't gotten around to playing it. And I was on the fence on whether or not I should play it today. I said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and play it. We're going to go ahead and react to it. But this is Alex Anthopoulos talking about the Braves falling apart in the postseason and what people pointed at. We haven't played this yet, so if you haven't heard it, you might want to dive in. Here is Alex Anthopoulos, and then we'll get to it.
I don't see it that way. I think I understand it's 2 years in a row. It's one coming off a World Series in 21. I mean, look, it was 2 years in a row in 2018, 2019. 2020, we get to Game 7 of the CS. Obviously, didn't get it done. And then 21, we get it done. I just think the 2 years are very different. I think, just with the health of our rotation, with where it was and so on. Like I said, I don't remember the exact scores of all those games. I just feel like take away Game 3 with what the final score was. We had opportunities in those other games, and you get the big hit, you come through, and you feel really good with the players that we have. And some guys in previous playoff years, I mean, you look at Eddie Rosario in 2021, it's 600 in the NLCS. Didn't do the same thing in the World Series. Doesn't make him less of a player or a hitter. You just can't necessarily translate it. Not the same guy wins the CS MVP that wins the World Series MVP and so on. So a lot of our guys won the World Series. A lot of this group was part of that World Series winning team. So we did not have issues with runners in scoring position during the year. Over 4 games, we didn't come through. And to make, to try to extrapolate from that more than what it is, I don't think would be a responsible thing to do.
All right, so there you have it. And basically, I know it was a big word salad, but basically what he's trying to say is that the two aren't connected. And I think in theory he's correct, but I still say that Braves fans are going to point to, you're going to try and tell us that the two aren't connected. But once again, we went into the postseason with a pitching staff that goes in limping in. And though you didn't foresee the Charlie Morton injury coming, at the same token, man's 40 years old. So to not have a backup plan, and Bryce Elder was already pitching very poorly heading towards the the trading deadline. He started pitching. He was phenomenal. You got to give it to Elder. He was phenomenal April, May, most of June. But come July, he was falling off. And you knew heading into the postseason, and at the time, you didn't even have Max Fried. You weren't for sure he was going to be on the team. But we kept being sold a bill of goods that it was going to be okay. Well, it wasn't okay. Well, don't worry. Max Fried is going to be all right. Kyle Wright's going to be all right. We're going to be ready to roll. It wasn't okay. And the fact that they didn't go after another starting pitcher is, look, here's the thing. Alex Anthopoulos is a phenomenal general manager. I'm not even necessarily going to lay all the blame on him. But you gotta wear some of it. You can't just sit there and say, well, it happens. Things happen. You never know. That's just baseball. No. You can be prepared. You didn't go out. Look, what did the Texas Rangers do? They went out and they added Jordan Montgomery, but they weren't sure if that was enough, so they added Max Scherzer at the deadline. 2 big-time arms at the deadline. Only one of them worked out. Max Scherzer is what we know that he is, which is a bum. Jordan Montgomery was a stud. And Jordan Montgomery could have been had by the Atlanta Braves. It's those kinds of moves. I still say, if Jordan Montgomery is an Atlanta Brave, the Atlanta Braves get past Philly. I would be shocked if they would have lost to Arizona in a 7-game series. There's no way in hell that would have happened. And then you're talking about possibly facing the Texas Rangers, and we have Montgomery and they don't. How? No one in the right mind would take Texas in that. So Jordan Montgomery was the chip that we did not go for. And we thought we rested our laurels. We thought that we were going to be okay. Well, it wasn't okay. And that's all fans are saying. They just want him to own it. And so that recording was a few days after the loss. And if you go back and listen to it and you realize where he's putting some of the blame towards the hitters not stepping up, and he mentions Rosario, it's pretty interesting because if you think about that, less than a week later, or just over a week later, from that recording, Eddie Rosario is no longer. And there's been some pretty interesting stories to come out that it's hinting that they're going to try to put Vaughn Grissom in left field. And if we go Vaughn Grissom in left field, one of the things you have to look at that, and I would think that he's going to adjust offensively a lot easier than trying to put him at shortstop. There's a big damn difference between trying to fit some kid over at shortstop just because he happened to play second base, as opposed to having him going back and playing left field. And in left field, he doesn't need to be dynamic. He just has to, just as long as he isn't just god-awful. And I don't expect Vaughn Grissom to be god-awful in left field. Guys have done it for years. They have taken guys who have played other positions, and that's when the first place you see him. If you don't see him in left field, you see him at first base. And I believe that first base is much more difficult to learn because there's just so much that goes into, holding runners, guarding the line, making sure you're turning two, where to go on a number of infield scenarios when the ball's in play. Left field, you're pretty, and not to mention the fact, if you're out there playing left field for the Atlanta Braves, you got Money Mike backing you up. So you can be a little more aggressive. It'll be okay. I do still think that they would probably bring someone into platoon who may be known as a little better outfielder. Depends on what you could get for the money, but let's get into those tiers, because interesting article out there about the tier 1, tier 2 type of free agents. So tier 1, and this just tells you where their mindset is at. They've got Shohei Ohtani on tier 1. They don't have anyone else on tier 1. That's a little absurd to say only one guy's a tier 1. Because at that point, you just put him on a tier A++, because he's on his own planet. Any guy that, when he's fully healthy, can be a frontline starter in your rotation and could lead the league in home runs. That guy doesn't play the same sport everybody else does. But you're trying to tell me that Blake Snell isn't a tier 1 guy? By the way, I don't know if y'all saw it or not, but recently there was an article that was leaked and then pulled back. And when it was pulled back, this is by Jeff Passan, what everyone realized was he had leaked the winners of each individual award, because the names on the list were not in alphabetical order. They were in the order of what most people believe is the way of the voting. And he may not have picked up on it on a couple of players. But once he realized it, he pulled it back. Now that's what everybody is reading into it. The reason why I bring that up, the guy at the front of the class for the National League MVP on that line was Ronald Acuna Jr. I think we all know or all believe that he'll be the NL MVP, but that right there, my friends, that solidified it. Ronald Acuna Jr. has won the MVP. Passon accidentally leaked it. He didn't realize what he was leaking. So take that with a grain of salt, but it looks like that he did win it. And the reason why I bring that up is because Blake Snell was on the one line for the National League Cy Young. And rightfully so. But to say there's only one guy on tier one, this is a pretty good free agent class. It's not a bunch of ham and beans. I mean, there are some damn good players out there. We just talked about him. Jordan Montgomery's a free agent. Sonny Gray. Guys that are realistic landing spot for the Atlanta Braves. Sonny Gray, to me, is number one with the bullet. He's the guy that I want. I keep seeing Aaron Nola. I just don't think the Braves are going to go after Aaron Nola. And there's a number of reasons why, but mainly because he has been up and down. He's been inconsistent. And also, I believe that he put together enough of a good season. Enough of a good season to go out there and get paid big time money. Jordan Montgomery is out there. But Aaron Nola is 30 years old. He hasn't thrown fewer than 180 innings in a full season since 2017, so obviously not counting the pandemic. And I get that part of it. But you also wonder how much tread is left on that tire. But Blake Snell is going to be a free agent. And that's a guy that I really, when I handicap who the Braves have a realistic chance of landing, I think we're talking about Sonny Gray. I think we're talking about Jordan Montgomery. What'll be interesting is that you've got that $8 million that was saved when we did not bring back Eddie Rosario, and instead looks like we're going to put Vaughn Grissom out in left field, and they'll probably bring in some. It won't be a total wash. They'll have someone, a Kevin Pillar type. It won't be Kevin Pillar because he wants an opportunity to play every day. But it'll be someone who's fine with platooning out in left field. Or maybe even just hold on to let just Forrest Wall play quite a bit. I would still think that they would need yet another guy to put in that rotation. But with all that being said, this is a team that if they add a Jordan Montgomery, if they add a Sonny Gray, we've got Charlie Morton coming back. We've got Spencer Strider, Max Fried for now. We've got him for 2024. And assuming that we don't make some huge trade involving him, he'll be there for the duration of the season. I doubt they would trade him at the deadline if we're in it. Unless it would be a really wild trade. Because if you start the season with Max Fried, I really feel like what you're saying is we're going for it. Just like in 21 with Freddie Freeman. We're going for it. And we'll worry about free agency when free agency comes. I really don't believe Max Fried's going to be an Atlanta Brave, unfortunately, after the 2024 season. So if they do trade him, I'm okay with it. As long as we get something great in return. If they're not going to get a big splash, I'd rather hold on to him, get the compensatory draft pick next year when he hits free agency, and deal with it. But when you look at what he's going to be asked to bring home, or what he's asking to bring home, is how I should word it. I don't see value in bringing Max Fried, who will be in during that contract, during the life of that contract, he will be 31 through 35 or 36 years old. We know his history issues. He's had a host of injury problems. And you're going to be asking, or he's going to be asking, to be paid along the lines as Carlos Rodon, which so we're talking about bare minimum 30 a year. And I think it's going to be closer to 35. Now, the reason why I would kind of like to see him traded before the season started and we restart with someone else is because you could then choose which direction he goes. In other words, you can send him to the American League and not have to face him on a regular basis. I don't want to see Max Fried on a regular basis. It really, this is the toughest part about being a Braves fan, isn't it? Is that we constantly see our guys go on to quote unquote greener pastures. And I get why it's going to happen, because if you're Max Fried and you've paid your dues, you have absolutely got the right to get your payday. Doesn't mean we got to like it, though, but you've absolutely earned it. And so I would kind of prefer to see him get traded somewhere. You know, people have asked me what's a realistic spot. It would be great to restart the clock with like the White Sox and Dylan Cease. I just don't think the White Sox are in the market. So when you're talking about where you would go, you would most likely you'd be looking to send him to the American League, right? The other option you could have is you could send Max Fried to the American League. What's a team that really needs starting pitching? That's the Baltimore Orioles. And they've got some pretty good young players, both offensively and defensively. And I wouldn't mind seeing them kicking the tires on that. We know Anthopoulos has a long history with the Toronto Blue Jays. That could be a landing spot. You could see a number of different scenarios in the American League. That's where I would prefer to see him go. You know they're not trading Max Fried within the AL East. I mean, the NL East, excuse me. You know that they most likely are not going to make a trade with the Dodgers, a team that they will probably run into in the playoffs at some point if both of us just quit choking in the first round. So that's why I keep falling back on the American League. And you know the AL West, Texas could be a landing spot. You hate to see him go, but I would rather get something that we can build quickly off of now than to get gutted next offseason. But if you told me we were doing it because we're going to go be aggressive in this year's market and we're going after the World Series, and if that means that we're going to lose Max Fried in free agency next year, so be it. I can live with that, because you're talking about Max Fried in arbitration. He's going to get one hell of a arbitration deal, but it's still going to be extremely club friendly. It's being projected now between $14 and $15 million. And so arbitration wise, it's a pretty good deal. But when you look, and I don't think a lot of the models that I've seen has been factoring how many games he missed. I know he was phenomenal when he was on the mound, but how about the injury factor? So, but we'll say $14 million. That's still a hell of a deal, which means you're able to go out and sign one, if not two, starting pitchers to this rotation. What I would prefer to see is the Atlanta Braves go out and add Sonny Gray or Jordan Montgomery. I could be talked into either one. They both have their upsides. They both have their downsides. Montgomery, I think you're going to have to sign him to a little longer deal because he is 31. I don't believe he's going to get Max Fried kind of money. If he is, then forget it. It's not happening anyways. With Sonny Gray, you could probably get him on a shorter deal, but you're also signing a 34-year-old pitcher. And so that right there is a little disturbing in its own right, is the fact that you're going to get a 34-year-old pitcher. You've got Charlie Morton, who's 39. You know, he'll be 40 this year. So do you want to have that many aging arms? Let's see what we have in the chat. Anyone's got any questions, fire away. We're on several different things. We're on the PSF app. We are on Facebook, and we are on YouTube, and along with 99.1 FM WQEE. Lane says, can the Mets sign Ohtani? Yeah, I don't believe that's where I believe is. If you're just joining us, I believe he's heading to the West Coast. But if they go out there, what the Mets have said is that they don't believe that they have a chance at signing Ohtani. But I don't believe that that's necessarily the case. I still think if you cut away everything and you just look at the bare bones of what was said by Max Scherzer when he was traded from the Mets to Texas. And though I think he let too many beans spill in a conversation that he had with management. But the short of it is, he made the comments that they told him that they were going for a rebuild, and we're talking about more like 2025, 2026 before they're competitive again. And remember, they just signed the new manager, Carlos Mendoza, and he is an analytics guy from the Yankees. And I do believe when it's all said and done, Carlos Mendoza is being hired to be fired. And why do I say that? Well, he's an analytics guy, and though he does have the relationship with the new general manager, I still believe when the Mets start making their bigger splashes in free agency that are more likely to come next offseason and the offseason after, Mendoza's probably not going to be their guy, but you can save a little money right now not hiring one of the big names when you believe this is going to be a rebuild. And you lower the expectation of the fan bases, and you go out there and you try to develop some of these younger players like Acuna's younger brother is coming up. And remember, they've got another big fish on their table. What do they do? What do the Mets do about the fact that Pete Alonso is about to become a free agent? They're going to ride that out, or are they going to go out there and say, all right, we're going to have to back the truck up for Pete Alonso. And Pete Alonso is going to get well over $300 million, I would expect. When he hits it, he's out of free agent this year, but he's on the doorstep. So to lock him up, they're going to have to be looking at somewhere close to $300 million. Do they want to put that for him, or do we believe some of these rumors we heard last summer about him possibly being on the trading block? And see what I say. Do you think the Braves going to get a left fielder? Well, I think they're going to add a minor left fielder. I do not believe they're going to get a big splash. I think what they're most likely doing, at least from the tea leaves you can read from the guys that cover the team, they have all been hinting that Vaughn Grissom is going to be given an earnest chance to play left field. I still think you're going to go out there and get a traditional left fielder. Now, when you look at some of the ones that are out there on the market, JD Martinez, I'm sorry, but he has no value to the Braves. He's 36 years old. He's been on the IL quite a bit. And though he's a good hitter, he's realistically a DH at this point in his career. Now, to me, I would rather save that money, go get us a starting pitcher, and then can we add a guy like Josh Hader to that bullpen, making that bullpen top 10 elite? I would love to see them bring in Jorge Soler. I think a lot of folks would like to see him. But he just opted out of the final year of his contract, which was worth $9 million. $9 million. The same amount that they didn't want to pay Eddie Rosario. But the Braves front office has hinted that they're going to have more money to play with this year. So would they be able to bring Jorge Soler in at 32 years old? What do you think? He probably wants like a 4-year deal at this point in his career? When he's over there hitting over 30 bombs, even on an injury-shortened season, he hit over 30 home runs. So do they go out and get him? And at that point, Vaughn Grissom becomes a trade chip. Or do they make an honest attempt to try to see if Vaughn Grissom can play left field, and then you've got all of March, meaning all of spring training, March, April, May, June, and July to see what do you have, and if you don't have what you think you have, go get a left fielder via trade. There's a kid that's going to get a lot of, and this is the kid that they said that that the Mets are going in on, that they're not as concerned about trying to sign Shohei Ohtani, but they do want to go after Yamamoto. And Yamamoto is a right-handed pitcher, 25 years old, was phenomenal in the WBC. And you see how much success they had with Kodai Senga. And they're from everything that I've read and heard, the Mets are one of the top 3 teams that are going to be going all in on Yamamoto. And he's got some nasty stuff. I mean, he's got what is essentially a fork ball, but it almost has split action where it's got enough speed and just dies at the plate. 25 years old. Now, the one thing that you always have an issue with when you bring guys from the KBO or the Japanese league is they're not used to pitching more than once a week. So you have to be okay with that. If you're going to bring them in, and you're going to pay them the moon and stars, you're going to have to be okay with the fact that they are only going to pitch about once a week. At least the first season. You might be able to build them up, but you don't want to go out there and burn them out. Here's the other thing, and this is why the Mets are one of the biggest players in this, and the Braves aren't really in this conversation. You're not just going to have to give Yamamoto what folks have been rumoring of a deal of around $200 million to bring him in. So that's crazy enough. But you're going to have to add the posting fee to that. And the posting fee for Yamamoto is going to be somewhere between 35 to 40 at least. So you could be paying him for the first year of that contract, depending on how long the contract is and what the AAV is. You could be talking about paying a guy 50, 60 million for the first season. And this is supposed to be a rebuild for the Mets. And if they're not willing to do that, then who the hell is? Because they're about the only organization that's that wild and crazy enough to do that. I've heard that the Yankees are interested in him. I've heard that the Red Sox are interested in him. There's a lot of teams that have interest, but how many are going to pony up the posting fee, which for folks who aren't familiar with that money goes to the team that he's coming from. That's how he's become a free agent. That's how their free agency works. And then on top of that, whatever you're paying him per year. And yes, if you're wondering, the whole thing goes against your salary for that year. So if you end up, we'll just say they pay him $25 million a year for however long the contract is. Let's say it's an 8-year deal for $25 million. It makes it simple, makes it a $200 million contract. And let's say there's a posting fee of another $25 million. We'll just make it simple. That entire $50 million, not just the 25, that entire $50 million goes onto your salary cap, which means you're going to have to pay. Not only do you have to pay all that money, but it's going to go towards you breaking the bank and going over what they call the salary threshold in baseball. And at that point, you have to start paying more. and you're basically paying a tax on top of it. So you have to take all of that in consideration when you're wondering if your favorite team is going to sign a guy from there. It's not just what they're going to pay him per year. That's why I say the Braves will never be in on this. Not in their current salary structure. Now, when they get on the other side of this terrible cable deal that they signed 20 years ago, that's a different conversation. But as of right now, they're not going to go and pay a guy when they're talking about topping out on most guys are on $22 million, and that might go up a tad this year. But we'll just use that number because that's the number that has been just beat over our head for the last season and a half. When they're saying they don't want to go above $22 million per player, $22 million is not even going to be the posting fee for a guy. You're going to pay more than that just to get his rights. So there's just not much of a chance of any of this going towards Atlanta, but Atlanta has a real chance of signing guys. Look, we mentioned Sonny Gray, we mentioned Jordan Montgomery, but there are other guys that are out there, and there are other relievers. If we do not get a guy like Josh Hader added to the bullpen, what about Aroldis Chapman? What could you bring him in for? He's 36 years old. He's still hitting 100 miles an hour. There's guys like Jack Flaherty and Giolito out there on the free agent market, but I have no interest in them because they have been batting practice for the last season and a half. Jordan Hicks is another interesting one. You see the ceiling with him, and if he can just cut down his walks, the kid is phenomenal. Right-handed reliever, played for the Cardinals and went to Toronto, but he's got fire coming out of his arm. And if y'all miss the memo, they did say that Bryce Harper is going to be their first baseman going forward, meaning Rhys Hoskins is hitting the free agent market, and he won't be coming back to the Phillies. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. The Braves have no real interest in him, but it'll be really interesting to see where he goes. And there's a couple other players. We don't have time to get into all that today. Just wanted to hit you up on this stuff. And I still like, if you're going to have someone like Vaughn Grissom out there trying to learn his craft, I love the idea of Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield can play all over the infield. He can play the outfield. He's 35 years old, but he still has speed. And he's a good bat to come off the bench. The question will be, would he sign with Atlanta at 35 going into age 36 year? Would he do that because he thought maybe he has a chance of playing for a championship and he's okay with not playing every day? All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Y'all have a great day. And as always, go Braves. We'll see you next Monday. And then anytime something drops, anytime free agency drops, we will have something on that day. May not happen instantly, but we will have it. Y'all have a great one, y'all.
You're in Braves country.